Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Excited to be here at the Ether Night stage. Excited for our next talk with Max from SporkDAO. From Cypherpunk to billions on chains. Take it away, Max.
All right, so before I get started, how's everybody's ETHDenver going? Going relatively good? I was kind of hoping that maybe some of y'all would help me out at some points. Just once I get to the part of the presentation where I need your help, you'll be able to tell. I do some volunteer work for ETHDenver. I do a lot of the speaker reviews, privacy curation, that kind of stuff. So, you know, as is so often the case, I procrastinated to the last minute on making this presentation, and now I have something that's, you know, bare bones at best. But if you guys want to engage with me, please do, shout out, we can have a discussion, and yeah, hopefully we'll have a good time. So I titled this talk From Cypherpunk Manifesto to Billions on Chain, right? I kind of think of this as being almost a contradiction. I've been in crypto for about 4 years now, which is not that long in the grand scale of things, but I've been involved with a lot of Bitcoiners for much longer. And I have to say, it took me a long time before I understood, I guess, what the point of all of this was. And I still struggle with that question sometimes. I want to kind of address, well, this is anyway the inspiration for this talk. We'll see where I end up going with this. But I think that where we're going as an industry is maybe not where we thought we were going to end up in the beginning. And yeah, we'll just kind of go through this and see what you guys think. So quick background, for those of you who don't know, I imagine many of you do. So cypherpunkism dates back to the late 1980s, right? And basically it was this idea, as the internet was sort of becoming not just, you know, a military communications technology, but something that it became clear that everybody was going to use, that there wasn't going to be any innate privacy. And privacy is kind of a necessary thing for having autonomy, for having some agency and some human rights on, online. So there was a group of people who were, you know, in Silicon Valley in the late 1980s, and they knew that they were going to have to fight back against a lot of this surveillance, a lot of this centralized control, if we really wanted the internet to be a public space, right? Bitcoin, I think, has really made this term something that came much more back into the public sphere because, you know, Satoshi being from where he was, coming from this cypherpunk forum back in the early 2000s, Bitcoin really was cypherpunk in origin and really came from these ideals of wanting to give people more autonomy on chain, not having to do your financial transactions through a bank or Visa, any of that stuff, actually trying to truly make something peer-to-peer, something that people could have individual agency with. And, you know, I think we've all had our own journey at this point. We've all kind of evolved through different eras of thought, and I'm certainly, you know, done a lot of that myself. So this is the second thing that I wanted to bring up. These are kind of the two core ideas I wanted to bring up in this presentation, right? The second thing is this idea that what we are doing right now is not something that we've ever done before. Well, if you look back at financial history, particularly modern financial history, and by modern I really just mean 20th century, this whole speculation thing, this manipulation of various stocks, whatever has you, the regulations that we have right now came to be largely because of what we observed people doing without them. And, you know, I was involved in some of this Solana trading, I imagine many of us were, and this really kind of gives you some doubt, maybe, about whether we truly are responsible enough, I guess, to handle our own currency, or at least whether we are in the public sphere. So that's basically it. Those are the two things that I want to lead you with before I get into a few hot takes. And I'd kind of like anybody who wants to engage with me to just shout something out, and we can maybe make a discussion out of any of these things. Yeah, sorry. This is what tends to happen around ETHDenver. I really come at this with the best intentions, but unfortunately, here we are. So hot take number one, banks are okay, actually. I know that this is going to be like really controversial, but I think in the first world in particular, your average person doesn't actually get much benefit from custodying their own funds and probably doesn't really want to. And I think this is really something that we struggle with a lot when we're talking about application developers. Like, how do we bring people value, right? And are we bringing people any value? When you watch people lose everything that they've invested on chain, just for like naivete, like the level of technical competence, the baseline level that you need to even operate in this space, to me, I have pretty much, and I mean, maybe somebody has a different opinion on this, I think that people will never get there. And maybe there's things that, like AI agents or something like that, they're going to make this all more usable. Maybe we're going to build better apps that people will be able to use with less technical expertise, less friction. But I just don't see this current paradigm in the first world changing. Now, obviously, I don't think that's the case in parts of the world where you have political oppression. Crypto is a great technology for fighting back against government control, against people who really don't want people to have agency in their financial transactions. And of course, in South America too, you can't even really build financial value if you can't count on the currency that you're working with to maintain the value of the work that you put into it. But largely, outside of these political things, and I do think crypto is very important for fighting back against those things, I think banks are here to stay. I think banks are getting involved in crypto, a little bit more on that later. And I just don't, personally, I don't see that changing. I think that crypto is largely going to be a technology for financial institutions in the coming years. If anybody wants to disagree with that, I'm happy to hear some educated opinions on it. But I'm not seeing anybody getting too eager to do so. So we're going to move on to hot take number 2. And this I kind of alluded to before. So decentralization is really important. I really think that people and their communities have a right to live their lives the way that they want to, right? And I think that financial autonomy is a huge part of that. So of course, being controlled by a central bank, having so much of your life really dictated by the overall market and not just you, your life, your community, I do think that's a problem. And I think really why this ends up being important, why decentralization ends up being important, is because it gives people the tools to have an alternative. In a situation where your government and your banks are failing you, that's really when I start to think of crypto as being more powerful. But as a baseline thing, as long as the rest of social fabric, I suppose, is like holding together, I think people are, not getting value out of this is a lot less obvious. Anybody? Okay, yeah, I can see you. I can see you out there. You're percolating. Shout out whenever you want. We can talk about this. Yeah. Okay, I made a meme. This is sort of how I feel these days. Like when I'm talking about cypherpunkism, this is where we started. We're like trying to be libertarian. We're trying to have autonomy. We're trying to take power away from governments. And now, like, this is basically what you see on Twitter, right? Is like everybody talking about how great it is that they can do Ponzi schemes and nobody can tell them not to. Or Solana, I mean, like, I believe it was Anatoly who came out and like said on stage, nobody cares about decentralization. It doesn't matter. And I think, and then of course this last bit about U.S. Bitcoin Reserve, which I have I am very cynical about. I think supporting that in general is a pretty cynical way of thinking where mostly you're concerned with the government pumping your bags. Cool. I mean, I also like having money. I like being able to fly around the world, see cool places, eat good food, all that good stuff. But bluntly, it does seem to me like diametrically opposed to what was supposed to be the point of all of this.
Try buying a house.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's what created all of this, the housing market crash, okay, created by banks.
Uh-huh.
Try buying a house today. Most people cannot afford to buy a house.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'm trying to buy a house. I am experiencing this exact phenomenon.
They're not good when we still have active red line. Like
This is true, and there's definitely social components to this, and this is part of what I mean when I say that like decentralization ends up being a really important tool to keep yourself from being in an oppressed situation. In that situation, I completely agree.
But those people who are being oppressed are not in these rooms.
Yeah.
That's the disconnect. That's the disconnect.
And the next question I have is, are you a resident of the United States?
Yes,
Okay,
obviously.
So
So I have a United States perspective to this, and that's the caveat that I'm giving this as well.
So the cool little like drift down memory lane that we had there from like the '90s Cypherpunk list that strangely I was on, like to where we are now. I know I'm just old. Kind of implies that we've definitely lost our way because the problems we faced in trying to bring groundbreaking availability of the technology to people is running in parallel with a speed running the entire economic process since the Templars into oblivion faster than anything has ever been speed run.
Yeah.
And I think in order for us to overcome the need to use banks, which I believe everybody uses not because they're good, but because they have no choice. It's a frog in a pot situation that like you are constantly looking for whoever's going to extract less value from you when
Credit unions.
Yeah.
But and so like I was listening to your opinions and what you were saying and saying it seems like you're fighting the apathy that is being generated by the system that you helped create.
Well, I mean, yes, right? And I mean, nihilism, like financial nihilism, is having such a moment over this last year, right? Sorry, I'm sort of losing my train of thought on that one, but
Diversity in the room. The lack of diversity continues to be when we have echo chambers, right? We don't create resilient, actual multi-interdisciplinary systems, which are the most resilient and productive.
no, I do agree with that. Like fundamentally, I think like the family unit is like the most important human organization, right?
Do you have kids?
No.
You need more than just a family unit. You need a much bigger.
No, of course, but that's what I mean. I mean, family as in the extended community around you. I think that's truly what people care about and what people see. I've actually done a really good time of rambling through my time, so thanks for bearing with me, I suppose. Move on to the next thing. Okay, alluding to this. A lot of people have told me over the last 2 years that the problem is just that the UX is so bad. I disagree. The UX is bad, and many apps are bad, but even as we start to get better and better UX, what's the point, right? Like, what are people getting by getting involved in all of this? Should I wrap it up, by the way? Okay, sorry. So we will leave it at this particular, one of my points, but I really think that we shouldn't be thinking so much about just making, because UX is really a Web 2 phenomenon, right? Making apps that are like super easy to get into, that are really addictive, that have all these dark patterns, that's not what we should be caring about in crypto. That makes no sense. That defies the whole point of what we're doing here. So if we're recreating the same systems in crypto, all we're doing is shoehorning something that doesn't really work in the first place back into a system that was designed to be something else. I guess I'll leave it at that. Yeah. Last thing I want to say, hope you had fun. I work for a small privacy protocol on Ethereum called Oxbow. We're putting out something called privacy pools. It's similar to other anonymity pools, but we're effectively giving people the tools to not associate with criminals in North Korea, which I think is incredibly important for your average on-chain user. So check us out, and I will be done. Thank you.